Have I impulsively dyed my hair since the last time you saw me? Yes. Do I care? No, because it's pretty. Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name's Allie. If you're new here, hello. If you're returning, welcome back. I appreciate you. Thank you for not being sick of me yet. Today's video, I figured I would just sit down and go through every book I've ever given 5 stars. So this has fantasy in it, romance. I think there might be a couple like thrillery books in it. A little bit of every genre that I've ever read. Hopefully this will convince you guys to read any of these books if they're on your TBR or give you some new recommendations. But yeah, all the books I've given 5 stars. Let's jump right into it. So first up is Small Favors by Erin A. Craig. This book is like a thriller, but fantasy. It's a fantasy thriller. Our main character is Ellery, and she lives in Amity Falls, which is this super isolated small town. Like, they have bigger cities that like once a year come and bring them supplies. Like, there's this big isolated town, and they are self-sufficient. Ellery's family lives on a bee farm, and they make honey, flowers, all that is their main source of income, is their honeybees. And the reason they're so isolated is because all of the woods around Amity Falls are filled with these weird magical creatures. Basically, when the town was founded, all the founders had to like chase off and destroy monsters from this area to be able to establish their town. And everything has been peace and quiet for years, but one day suddenly people from town, tons of cattle, crops, a bunch of stuff starts either going missing or burning, weird deformed animals being born from cattle. Just a bunch of weird stuff starts happening. And the biggest issue sets forth when a group of people that go to collect their yearly supplies don't make it and never come back. Because the town was founded so long ago, has kind of become like this urban myth that they use to keep kids out of the woods. It's more of a scare tactic, and nobody really knows if they actually believe it. But as they figure out, the monsters in the woods are true, and there seems to be this one that's going to person throughout town and granting whatever their deepest, darkest wish is for a favor for them. And usually those favors hurt the other townspeople. So basically, Ellery meets this boy who is kind of weird. She knows he's kind of weird, but doesn't exactly know what his backstory is. He's new to town, blah, blah, blah. And all this weird stuff starts happening in town. And so it basically ends up, through everything that happens, it's up to Ellery to basically race against time and stop these monsters from destroying their town and like saving this boy that she's fallen in love with and all of this. It's such a good story. I don't think I've heard anybody recommend this, but this book is so good. There's definitely some gruesome described areas, so if you aren't necessarily someone that likes gruesome things, you might not like this in certain spots, but all in all, this book is amazing. I love thriller books and I love fantasy, so this was like the perfect combination of the two genres, and I cannot get enough of it. This is a book that had me on my toes the entire time. It's a book that I wish I could read again for the very first time. It's so amazing. I cannot recommend it enough. Please go check it out if you have not. Small Favors by Erin A. Craig. So the next one that's on Kindle, Marriage for One by Ella Mays. This is a fairly popular book. I feel like most people have read it. I've definitely brought it up before in other books. I have a whole fake dating marriage and convenience video. If you like that trope and you want to check it out, this book is in that. I will tag that for you guys. But this follows Jack and Rose. Rose is set to inherit this little cornerstone area that she wants to turn into a cafe because her uncle has recently died, and she is going to the lawyer to try and get the property, and there's been some drama with it about how she can and cannot get it. Basically, it ends up, for reasons explained in the book, she has to marry this lawyer guy that's been in contact with all the properties to be able to get her property. So they start fake dating, fake marriage, very much Grumpy Sunshine as well. I love Jack. He's so cute. But this is a super popular book. It's great. Most people love it. Just a nice, cute marriage and convenience romance book. So check that if you have not. So then next up is technically a duet, The Bellinger Sisters. So it starts off with It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey. This follows Piper and Hannah. Piper is this big LA influencer party girl. She basically gets herself in a little bit of trouble, and her stepdad sends her to this old property that her biological father had when they were younger. It's in Seattle, in this little tiny fishing village. He basically sends her and her sister there as a place to kind of just lay low and find themselves and like figure out what they want to do with their lives other than just partying. Hannah just kind of goes for moral support. She never was the one that was actually in trouble. But while they're there, of Piper meets Brendan, who is a captain of one of the big crab ships. Again, grumpy sunshine. Brendan hates her because he thinks she is just a party girl that doesn't know how to do anything with her life. But it is enemies to lovers. They eventually work things out and fall in love. It's such a good book. I love it. Grumpy Sunshine. I love myself a Grumpy Sunshine. And then the second one just came out earlier this month, which is Hook, Line, and Sinker, which follows her younger sister Hannah. Also lives in LA, but she works on movie sets, and it's her dream to kind of be a movie score person that like makes all of the music for movies. And she kind of convinces the director for the movie to switch locations to the fishing village in Seattle because she just thinks it'll fit the vibe of the movie better. And in the first book, it's hinted that she has like this little bit of a crush thing on Brendan's best friend Fox. So it's them rekindling their relationship a little bit. Theirs is more of a friends to lovers than it is an enemies to lovers, but it's just as cute. I adore both of these books. They're so great. Please check them out if you haven't. So the next up is From Lukov with Love by Mariana Zapata. It is a slow burn. It's friends to lovers, a little bit of an enemies to lovers. Sports romance follows ice skaters. This follows Jasmine and Ivan Lukov. They are both figure skaters. Ivan needs a new partner for like his Olympic routine. Although he and Jasmine don't get along, their coaches think that they will fit together style-wise while they're skating. So they become paired together for ice skating, and it's them falling in love for that. It's just a cute book. This is one of my favorite Mariana Zapata books. It makes my heart happy. It gives me the romance butterflies. I can't recommend it enough. So then next up is Fine Print by Lauren Asher. This follows Rowan and Zara. Rowan is a big like CEO man. His grandfather owns Dream World, which is basically like the Disneyland of this world. Disneyland doesn't exist, it's Dream World, and his grandfather passes away. So Rowan and his three brothers are going to inherit a bunch of things surrounding Dream World. One of them is going to become the CEO, one of them is going to like be the owner of the park, yada yada yada. With each of them getting these park inheritance, there is terms and conditions, little fine print things that they have to do to be able to get them. And basically Rowan is set to like put the magic back into Dreamland. Zara is an employer there. She has sent a bunch of proposals for like new rides and stuff. She wants to be like on the creators board making new rides and things for Dreamland. Enemies to lovers, she and Rowan do not get along. Rowan is very stoic, grumpy sunshine again, but it also has the trope of you are texting someone and falling in love with them on the internet and not realizing who the person is in real life. Rowan has communications with Zara as a fake employee and they develop feelings, but he's also developing feelings with Zara in real life, but they're two separate people and she doesn't know that. So it also has that drama aspect to it. This is the first book in what should be 3. The second book is also out. But yeah, the fine print, a lot of people love it. It's popular for a reason, so go check it out if you haven't. And then another Mariana Zapata, All Roads Lead Here. This is again one of my all-time favorite Mariana Zapatas. This is like a single parent trope. This is a single parent trope, but with more of like a teenage young adult child instead of like a 5-year-old, because sometimes single parent tropes with like young kids is weird to me because it's like a 5-year-old saying all this like weird inspirational stuff that like no normal 5-year-old would say. So I find it a lot more like compelling child wisdom stuff when it's an older based child, and I think that's what I really liked about this specifically. But our main characters in this are Aurora and Rhodes. Aurora is newly divorced and she has had past trauma with her mother who went missing on a hiking trip and died, but nobody like ever recovered her body or anything. So she goes to the town that her mother died in just to try and see if she can find some sort of closure to that area of her life, and then also to just get space away from her ex. And she sees a listing for like a house rental on the internet and she rents it out. She arrives there to realize that the owner of the house did not realize that that part of the house was up for rent. It's like their converted garage, and Rhodes busts in there when she shows up and he's like, hey, you're not supposed to be here. And she's like, well, I saw this for rent on the internet. And Rhodes realizes that his young son had put the garage up for rental without telling him. And Aurora is like, I'm so sorry, like I will 100% leave. And Rhodes is like, no, it's fine, like it's not your fault, you can stay here. But they get off on the wrong foot. Very much Grumpy Sunshine. He's very stoic, but this is probably one of my all-time favorite Mariana Zapata books. Rhodes, I'm in love with him. I want to marry this man. He is, what's it called? the woods police. What is that called? What is that job title called when you're like, you police the woods? He's a game warden. That's what it is. He's a game warden. So he has big connections, all the trails and stuff. So like he knows a lot about Aurora's mother's situation, not knowing that it is Aurora's mother. So that kind of ties in a way. But this book is so cute. I adore it. Please go check it out if you like slow burn romance. So then next, what I feel like a lot of people have 5-starred. Again, it's a very popular book, but it's popular for a reason. The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. But I've tagged the heck out of this book. I love it. This is just a classic enemies to lovers workplace romance. It's the blueprint. This follows Lucy and Josh. They work for a publishing company. They share an office space together, so they are just trapped in the same room with each other every day, and they don't like each other. Secretly, they both do like each other, but neither of them know that. I live for the banter in this book. I live for the scenes. They're iconic. If you are on the fence about reading it, don't be. It's amazing. You can't go wrong with it. Next up, a book that was probably one of my all-time favorite reads of 2021, Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This book I loved so much that this is the first book that I side tabbed with highlighters instead of using like normal tabby tabs, because if I tabby tabbed this, I would have used 3 packages of tabs. So I have all my sides highlighted corresponding to what I highlighted on the pages. This book is amazing. This book follows Daisy Jones and a band called The Six, who eventually merged together. This is them through like the early 70s through 80s, them growing as a band. It has a little bit of romance in it, but it's not the main plot line, and it's not necessarily happy romance. But the way this book is written, it is written like interview style. It's all them going in for an interview, but it has the pages written out with like the person and their sentence. So you're getting the same scene through multiple points of view all at the same time. And I highly recommend the audiobook on Audible for this. The audiobook takes this book to a whole nother level because you have multiple people playing each character. So it's like you're sitting down and like listening to a podcast of them, or like listening to a documentary of the people telling their story. It's so compelling. It's compelling enough to read on its own as a book, but with the audiobook, it just enhances it so much. This is also going to be becoming a TV show, I believe. If you are somebody that likes watching TV shows and movies after reading the book, I highly suggest reading this book first. It's amazing. Taylor Jenkins Reid had an amazing year because I'm also going to be bringing up Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. So, Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, also by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This follows Evelyn Hugo and Monique. Monique is hired to interview Evelyn and get like her tell-all life story before she dies, as morbid as it sounds. But this whole story follows Monique interviewing Evelyn, so you're being flashed back to Evelyn in like the 50s through the 80s when she was this top of the line Hollywood it girl. Like she was the best actress to ever exist. Like she was in the limelight. She'd lived everything. And it's just her life of love and loss and what she went through as a woman in this situation. Also has LGBTQ plus ideals in it, which is always great. This book made me cry. This book made me feel things. So did Daisy Jones and the Six. That book also made me cry and feel things. But Daisy Jones and Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, they are so amazing. They were all over everything last year, but they were for a reason. If you have not read these yet, you are missing out on such amazing literature and such amazing stories, and I cannot convince you enough to read these books if you have not. So the next, as a series as a whole, that I honestly think I gave 5 stars to every single book regardless, is just the Dirty Air series by Lauren Asher. This is Throttled, Collided, Wrecked, and Redeemed. This is another companion novel series, sports romance, but it follows Formula One racers. The first book is like Enemies to Lovers, Brother's Best Friend. The second book is Friends to Lovers. Third is Enemies to Lovers. And then the fourth book is like Friends to Lovers, a little bit of kind of like a second chance. I adore these series. This is probably one of my favorite companion novel series, and like I want to read more Formula One romance now. But yeah, go check out this series. It's amazing. I love it. So many good tropes, so many good scenes. They're iconic. I live them, laugh them, love them. So the next is Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey Mcquinston. So this follows Henry and Alex. Alex is the son of the first female president, and then Henry is the prince of, I believe, Wales. It's kind of a coming of age and a little bit of them kind of growing up in the limelight, especially in politics. And it's also them kind of discovering their sexuality, having to come out as not straight to the entire world, especially being in areas of politics where things like that aren't necessarily supported. But it's LGBTQIA plus romance. It's a classic for that. This book made me happy. I wish that these were real people because I would love them to death. It's so cute. Please go check it out if you have not. So the next up is The Outsiders by Essie Hinton. This was a book that I reread for the first time a few months ago after having read it in high school. Loved it in high school and I still love it now. It's amazing. This is like Greaser era. This follows Ponyboy who lives in the lower class Greaser town and they have a big like turf war going on with the upper class kids. Lots of like issues with like racism and separation of class. I believe this is on the banned books list now, so definitely go check it out. Most books on banned books list are amazing. Ponyboy and one of his friends find themselves in trouble when they accidentally kill one of the upper class boys when they were like being jumped, so they kind of go on the run because they know that like if they get caught they'll basically be massacred for this because they are the lower class that killed an upper class. This book hits home on so many issues even present day. If you have not read this book, please go read it. I will never not 5-star this book. So then we have Reminders of Him by Colleen Hoover. This is her newest released book. I love Colleen Hoover. She writes amazing books. There is not one yet that I haven't liked, but this one specifically that she wrote is such a unique kind of like trope storyline to this. But this follows Kenna. It starts off in like a flashback and then it goes to present day where she is just being released from prison following a super horrendous accident. You find out that because she was in jail, had her daughter taken away. You feel for Kenna. You realize that she is just this amazing girl that was given this really crappy set of cards and she's just doing her best to get herself back up on her feet and get her daughter. You're rooting for her for this whole book, for her to see her daughter and get to be with her daughter again. It's got some drama in it. She meets this guy who, I don't want to spoil it, but ends up having this weird connection with her daughter that kind of complicates their relationship and kind of turns it into an enemies to lovers situation. But this book is so amazing. It's beautiful. It made me cry. It's such a unique storyline, but go check it out if you haven't. And then we have Bright Side by Kim Holden. This book made me cry like a child. It ripped my heart out and stabbed it 47 times. Friends to lovers, childhood friends to lovers, kind of combined a bit. It's a little bit of a love triangle, but not in an annoying way. This follows Kate, Keller, and Gus. Kate and Gus have been friends their entire lives. She is currently going to college. Gus is in a band and is currently touring with his band. They've had light feelings for each other their entire lives, but they've never done anything about it. Nobody has asked the other one out on a date or like brought up having romantic feelings for each other. They slept with each other once in like high school, but that was it. And it didn't affect their relationship. It didn't really change much. Some light flirting throughout the whole book, but nothing really comes of it. While she's at college, Kate meets Keller, who works at the coffee shop she goes to every day. And they have just like this instant connection where they're just soulmates. They eventually start liking each other. They do express their romantic interest for each other, but Kate is hiding things from Keller. Keller is hiding things from Kate. And this is just an amazing, heartbreaking book. If you have not read it and you want a nice, good, emotional book that will most likely make you cry, please go check it out if you haven't. So then we have one of my middle school staples, The Summer I Turned Pretty series by Jenny Han. This is a very old copy that I got in like 2011, so it's all 3 books into one. Pages are very yellow, very well worn. The spine is straight up just a U. Cannot tell you how many times I've reread these books. They're amazing. I like this series better than To All the Boys. I have all of the To All the Boys books and I've read them all and I love that series, but to me this is superior. This is like a friends to lovers, again a love triangle. It can be a little bit more annoying, but it's not annoying to the part where I don't like the story. But this follows Isabella, who is known as Belly for most of the book. That's her nickname. Follows Conrad, Jeremiah, and Stephen. Stephen is her brother. Conrad and Jeremiah are their childhood best friends. Belly's mom and Conrad and Jeremiah's mom have been best friends since like college. So every summer they spend every summer together at Conrad Beach House. Through the rest of the year they live hours apart and normally don't see each other. So it's just them kind of building their relationships with each other every summer. Belly has always had a crush on the oldest brother Conrad, but she's always just gotten the vibes of like, I'm just the little sister, I'm the only girl here, like they just pick on me, like it doesn't matter if I have a crush on him, nobody's gonna like me like that. I would say a light trigger warning, it does deal with aspects of cancer, as does Brightside, so light trigger warning for that as well. But these books are amazing. It's just summer vibes. If you like Jenny Han and you like To All the Boys, you will definitely love this series. This is also being turned into a series, I believe, on Amazon Prime. So again, if you want to read it before that comes out, I highly suggest it. So then next up is The Book Thief by Marcus Zuzak. This is another read in high school, another, I believe it's also on the banned books list, but this is a book that takes place in Nazi Germany and follows a Jewish man who is being hid from the Nazis. That's the whole overview. I don't really think I could say more without like spoiling it, but it's an amazing book. I feel like a classic that most people have read in high school, but it's amazing. It's a beautiful piece of literature, will make you cry, make you feel things. Go check it out if you haven't. So back over to Colleen Hoover, Verity. This, up until I read Reminders of Him, was my all-time favorite Colleen Hoover book because I like thrillers, and this is more of a thriller book than just like a typical Colleen Hoover romance. It has romance in it, but it's not a main plot line. And this is one of those books where the ending is completely up to you. You can decide who's right, who's wrong, what happened, what didn't. It's all up to your own interpretation, which is something I definitely enjoyed about this book. But our main character is Lowen, and she is hired to finish writing this super popular book series for this author Verity, who is in this really unfortunate accident. She physically can't in any way continue to write this series, and her husband and their publishing company hire Lowen to finish out the series for her. They have a similar writing style, so she basically moves into their house and is like going through Verity's office to figure out like any ideas she might have had for the next few books, go through all of her notes for stuff and kind of get ideas of where to start writing these next books. And she comes across this manuscript that Verity writes, and it's basically a big what if the accident that I was in wasn't an accident? Like, what if all of these weird things that have happened in my life were on purpose and not an accident? And it's her getting one story from Verity's manuscript and the other story from her husband, while she's also having this weird kind of romance with Verity's husband. Definitely check trigger warnings for this book. There's definitely some disturbing scenes to this book that could definitely be triggering for people, so please check trigger warnings for this book. But I loved this book. This is a book I want to be able to read again because I was on my toes and scared this entire book. And then following that right up, another book that please check trigger warnings before you read is It Ends With Us. I've tabbed the crap out of this book because I unfortunately can relate to a lot of this book. This book deals a lot with domestic violence, so again, if those are topics that you cannot handle reading, I would not suggest reading this, and that is okay. But our main characters are Lily and Atlas. Lily met Atlas as a young kid in like middle school. Atlas was homeless at the time and living in like this rundown house in the woods behind her. Feels for him because he's a kid her age that has no one to love and nowhere to go, so she will sneak blankets over to him and food and whatnot, and one day he just kind of disappears and she goes about her life and goes to college and whatnot, where Lily then meets Ryle as an adult and they start dating and considering getting married and all this. Ryle isn't necessarily someone who in the end is able to give her a healthy relationship, and Lily grew up in a household where she didn't see healthy relationships. I have so many things like quotes and scenes tabbed from this book that just resonated with me. If you are okay with reading this and those topics, please check it out if you haven't. So then we have one of my all-time favorite duets, Full Tilt and All In. But this is another duet that will rip your heart out and break it into a billion pieces. It starts with Full Tilt that breaks your heart and ends with All In that is more of the healing book, getting over all the trauma of the first one. But the first book follows Casey and Jonah. Casey is in this band, but she is kind of in a bad place with her band. They're having lots of issues with like drugs and alcohol. Jonah has some health issues. They end up meeting. It's kind of like a bad girl, good boy thing, and Jonah kind of helps her figure her life out and like decide whether or not this band is something that she can be in that's good for her and like her physical and mental health. But these books will destroy you. I was reading these books on my lunch break at my job and I was bawling in my car in the public parking lot. I'm sure multiple coworkers saw me crying in my car over these books, but they're worth public embarrassment. But please go check them out if you have not. These are some of my all-time favorite books. Like, if I had to pick my favorite books out of my whole 5-star list, these would probably be it. So then another Mariana Zapata culty. This is one of the very first Mariana Zapata books I ever read, and I loved it. This is again slow burn because it's Mariana Zapata sports romance following soccer, but this follows Sal and Rainier Culty. Sal is a professional women's soccer player. This is also like an age gap romance because growing up, Sal always looked up to Culty as her like muse and inspiration for soccer. Culty was at the time like the best of the best soccer player ever, so she really looked up to him. As an adult, when Sal is a professional soccer player, Culty is hired as like an assistant coach for her team, where she realizes that her heroes aren't necessarily great people. So as enemies to lovers, slow burn. They don't get off on the right foot. She kind of hates him because he's kind of a dick. But I love this book. Go check it out if you haven't. Then we have the Acotar series by Sarah J. Maas. I love this series. This is a series that basically got me into reading again after not reading pretty much all through college and high school. Probably the first series that I ever read after not reading for multiple years. And I love it. It's great. There is 3 main series books, 1 novella, and then 1 spin-off book. The novella kind of transfers you from the main series to the spin-off book. That's what it's there for, basically. But this technically is a Beauty and the Beast retelling. I can kind of see, but I feel like it's almost kind of a stretch in a way. But this is the blueprint of fairy and human. This follows Feyre in Tamlin. Feyre is a human who lives in this very poor town. She has a very poor family. She goes and hunts in the woods every day to find food to survive, very much Katniss from Hunger Games energy. She kills this big wolf in the woods one day to then find out she accidentally killed one of the Fae. Some of the Fae can transform into different animals, so she ends up killing this Fae wolf. And Tamlin, who is the High Lord of Springcourt, who is also a wolf transformer guy, comes knocking on her door and is like, hey, you killed my friend, so I'm gonna take you as punishment for your debts. So she goes and starts living in Springcourt among Fae, where she realizes that there's this weird curse throughout all of the Fae world, really bad ruler and everything, and it's kind of comes down to Feyre having to save all of fairy world. But it's a great series. I love it. Amazing characters, very big plot twists that you will not see coming. I adore this series. It's one of my all-time favorites. Go check it out if you haven't. So next up, also by Sarah J. Maas, is the Crescent City series. The second book for this just came out. It's on my shelf over here. This is kind of like the same like world building style of Acotar, but more modern. It's like Acotar, but they have cell phones. But this follows Hunt and Bryce. Hunt is an angel who is currently enslaved to like their ruling archangels, and he's basically used as a bounty hunter. He goes, kills whoever the archangels tell him to kill to like work off all of his life debts. Bryce is half human, half fae, just living life. Her best friend Danica is a werewolf transformer. She is like the leader of her pack. They've been friends since they've known each other. But Bryce is pretty much just known as a party girl, and so is Danica in a way. But Bryce goes out one night and comes home to Danica and her entire pack just like brutally murdered. Like they're just pulp on the floor, and she's super confused because they were all alive like an hour ago. And so Hunt is basically put on the case to help figure out what happened with Danica and her pack, because they kind of find out it's like weirdly connected to like a drug wing and a bunch of other stuff. So Bryce teams up with Hunt to help him. Enemies to lovers, Hunt hates her because he thinks that Bryce is just a spoiled party girl, and Bryce is like mourning the loss of her friend and like hates herself for being so irresponsible and partying all the time. And so she like hates Hunt for like blaming all of this stuff on her. So they have a very complicated relationship at start. But I love this series. It's definitely not as fast-paced as Acotar. Wasn't necessarily slow to me, but it can be slow to other people. I still adore these series. I loved the second one as well. Check them out if you haven't. So then next up, another series that as a whole I give 5 stars is the Dark Element series by Jennifer L. Armentrout, who wrote From Blood and Ash. This series is so much better. Blood and Ash to me was overrated. This series is amazing. It's 3 books. It is White Hot Kiss, Stone Cold Touch, Every Last Breath. If you read Kingdom of the Wicked and loved that book, you will love this series. Our main male character, Roth, is a prince of hell. He very much has the same vibes as Wrath from Kingdom of the Wicked and all that. Follows our main character, Layla, who is half human, half demon, but she has been raised by angels. This is humans with like demons and angels, but also they're technically gargoyles that work for the angels. Like angels are like the gods and the gargoyles work under them. So she's raised by this clan of gargoyles, but they're basically just like have weird angel powers. So she's human and demon and raised with people that are the complete opposite of what she is. But because she is half and half, she has this weird ability to be able to spot demons that are disguised as humans in the human world, so she can go and tag demons. So a lot of times after school she runs around and tags demons, angel and gargoyle buddies, to then get rid of. One day while she's out hunting, she comes across Roth, who is the Prince of Hell. It's kind of enemies to lovers with them. He's just very like cocky and like, I'm the Prince of Hell, and she's kind of like, well yeah, you kind of suck. But after spending more time with him, she kind of realizes that not everything the angels and the gargoyles have been teaching her is correct, because she is part demon. So like, how can she in her right mind like be killing the people that she is genetically part of? And it's also a bit of a love triangle, because she also has had a crush on this boy Zane that has been in her clan that she's grown up with her whole life. He's like betrothed, and it's got this weird little bit of a love triangle going on, but not in an annoying way. But I can't get enough of this series. I love it to death. I have reread this series multiple times. Yeah, go read it if you haven't. Another series that as a whole I gave 5 stars, Zodiac Academy. This is a very big series. It's my entire section of shelves down here. I have read every single book so far. It has 8 main series books and about 4 or 5 novellas out already. This is a very hard book to explain. It's got like multiple magic systems combined. It has elemental magic like air, earth, water, fire. It has transformation magic, transform into a werewolf or a vampire or a dragon. And it's also follows zodiacs. So depending on what your zodiac is, you might have different powers or abilities. It's another humans and fays. This follows our main characters, Tori and Darcy. They are twin sisters born in the Gemini season, which is like really rare, I guess, for fays. Raised in the human world, having no idea about any sort of fays ever existing at all. They were basically abandoned as children and orphaned, so they have always had a really tough upbringing through foster homes and stuff, and they live for each other. They live to help keep the other sister alive. One day, Orion, who works at the school, kind of comes a knocking on their door and is like, hey, you're Fae, we're taking you back to Fae school so you can learn how to be your powers, where they then also find out that they are next to inherit like the entire Fae kingdom. So they're like, cool, we didn't know any of this existed yesterday and now it's all supposed to be ours. Where they meet the enemies, who are main love interests. They are Caleb, Seth, Darius, and Max. They are the 4 princes who, before Tori and Darcy came, were supposed to inherit the entire kingdom. So they immediately hate Tori and Darcy because they're going to take away anything they've ever worked for. Lots of tropes in this. The first 2 books, straight up bully romance. Nothing but bully romance in the first 2 books. I am not a bully romance person. I normally hate it. So that says a lot that I've like 5-starred the first 2 books. But it has enemies to lovers, friends to lovers. It has LGBTQ. It has age gap, kind of like forbidden romance in it. I adore this series with my entire heart. So many plot twists, so many tropes, so many amazing things going on. It's a beautiful series. I cannot recommend it. I know it kind of sounds confusing. It might sound a little weird and Wattpad-y, but it's not. Please go check it out if you haven't. And then last but not least, my most recent 5-star is 1,000 Boy Kisses by Tilly Cole. This has been on my TBR for forever, and I just recently had felt the need or the want to read it. Again, it's another trigger warning for cancer issues, but it's also a childhood friends to lovers. But this follows Rune and Poppy. Rune has moved to Georgia from Norway, so he's just having to adapt to living in a whole other country and speaking a whole new language. Poppy is his next door neighbor. She is just super outgoing and bubbly, and they become best friends at the age of like 7. When Poppy is 8, her grandmother dies, and she gives Poppy this jar full of paper hearts, and she said these are going to be 1,000 boy kisses, all the kisses in your life that like make your heart feel like they're gonna explode, all the kisses in your life that are so special. So she tasks Poppy with filling this jar with 1,000 boy kisses that made her heart happy. And because it's childhood friends to lovers, ends up being with Rune. But it's also a little bit of a second chance romance. Rune has to move back to Norway when they are early teens, and he's away for a couple years and then comes back to stay permanently. And while Rune had moved, Poppy just dropped off the face of the earth like never texted him, never wrote him. All contact was cut, and she never told him why, never explained it. So Rune is kind of mad at her because he's like, you're my best friend and you just disappeared and never told me why. Like, what the heck? But things progress, and it's a beautiful story, and it's heartbreaking, and I love it. It's a beautiful story. Go check it out if you haven't. So yeah, as of right now, those are all the books and series that I've ever given 5 stars. If you haven't read any of them, I highly suggest you do. If you have, do you agree with my ratings? Did you also rate them 5 stars? But yeah, thank you guys for hanging out with me. I really appreciate you. If you guys want to follow me anywhere else on my social medias, they will, as always, be linked down below, as well as on my home screen channel banner. I will also have linked below the link to my Amazon wishlist if you guys want to send me any books. I love you guys. Thank you for hanging out with me. Stay safe, and I will see you somewhere else on the internet. Bye.